Hey everybody, so as we assemble on this fine Thursday morning, I want to do this video because last night a very dear friend of mine tagged me in one of those, tell six X number facts about yourself, and I got number six, tagged me in this on Facebook, and so the facts I posted about myself, well, a lot of people wrote in wanting the stories behind them, so here goes. The facts were: one, I once disrupted a Ben Affleck press conference. All right, so what happened was I was in college at the time, and it turned out that Ben Affleck was actually in town. He was in Boston. He was actually in town buying an engagement ring for Jennifer Garner. So I don't know if the press conference was to try to throw the press off that trail or what. They reported that was what they reported that night in the news. But anyway, when you're in Boston, especially in the Back Bay area and everything, in Boston, it gets insanely cold. I mean, like it's just I growing up in the South, I had no idea. It's a most of what we get in the South for winter is a light chill at best compared to Boston, and so you don't want to go out when you're in Boston. You don't want to go out when it's cold, too cold, for any long length of time. And I mean, I used to get regularly would put on like 3 layers of pants, 3 layers of shirts and jackets, gloves, everything else. So anyway, they have these connector things between some of the buildings, and if you play your cards right, you can cover several city blocks without ever going outside. And so this is what I was doing. I was there was one entrance near the Berkeley campus at the Sheridan Hotel that connected to the Prudential Center, which then connected across the street to another building, and I could very easily get to the grocery store and back and not spend very much time outside. And so I had my 2 bags of groceries in both hands. I looked like an elderly Russian woman from 50 years ago, coming along with my bags. And as I'm coming out of the Prudential Center into the Sheridan has this 2-story lobby, and I walked around into the second story of the lobby to go down. And as I'm coming around, there's this facing me as I'm coming around the corner into the room is this big, huge like press conference. All these cameras going and all this stuff. And there's this guy standing there talking. Very kind of cool and laid back and collected, standing there talking in a tuxedo. And so I walked around, and I was literally, I mean, it's like when I say I came around the corner, this is the guy, and I came around like this. I mean, I was right up on him, and I came around like this, and he looked. It was Ben Affleck, and so Ben Affleck like looks right at me, and I looked at him, and I was kind of stunned, and there's this pause, and his bodyguard came and kind of led me over to the escalator. And as I was going down on the escalator, I just shouted, "I loved you in Paycheck!" 2, I didn't start driving until after college. Nothing so interesting. It's just what happened was I was driving just fine. I started driving in Oxford, Mississippi, and I was doing just fine. I started at about 15, 16, where most people are when they start driving. And I was doing fine. I was going out with my dad, and we were, we just drive around town. And I got my permit, and I had to get the 40 hours or whatever it was. And so I just go out with my dad and drive around some. My parents found out that it would be cheaper you could insure a teenager for less money if they had completed driving lessons with a registered driving instructor. So we got this guy that was he was a nice guy, decent guy, nothing cannot say anything bad about the guy. He was a very nice guy, and I'm not. I don't want to sound like I'm condemning him, but he was the kind of person that made me nervous. Namely, he was a fire and brimstone preacher, in addition to being a driving instructor, and so it made me very nervous. And and everything he said was kind of like this, and and I'd be. It was I'd come to an intersection where I was used to turning right, and he would say turn left, and not really thinking about it, I would turn right, and he'd say, "Okay, now we're having some trouble telling the difference between our left and our right." And I was just thinking, "Okay, Jenny," but but anyway, so it was really, really tedious, and my driving just sucked. I actually peeled some paint off of his car. He was making me run errands for, we would run errands, which really wasn't a bad way to learn to drive, because that's the kind of thing you need to know how to do anyway. But the first day we were turning into a bank to put money in the deposit money, and I peeled the paint off of his car as I was turning, and he had to actually send it to get it repainted. And we did the lesson in a different car the next week and everything. So the one time I can actually remember, I don't know why we didn't stop. We just went on. We didn't stop to talk to the people. I don't know why. But of course, it says student driver in big bold letters on either side of his car. But as we're driving along, we were coming out of the shopping mall. And the shopping mall in Oxford is, this will give you an idea of what of kind of Mississippi logic. The shopping mall in Oxford had a theater called the Cinema 4, and the M and the A were knocked off in a weather incident, and so did they order another M and an A? No, they ordered a big apostrophe and stuck it on there, so it became the Cine 4. But anyway, so we're driving along. We're coming out of the parking lot of the shopping mall, and as we're turning, we get on the little the shopping mall has one of those big kind of circular parking lots, and then there's a kind of a rampish sort of thing turning off, going out of it. And we're going up that, and there's a car next to us, and I took the corner so close that I scraped against the car, and sparks flew. And just like, and sparks flew up, and the guy actually grabbed the wheel from me, and was like guided me away. He was just terrified. And so he goes to my parents at the end of the lessons. He sits down with my parents and says he's just terrified that I'm going to get my driver's license. I was driving just fine before. I had never. I was driving just fine before. It was just I was so nervous around this guy that he told my parents, he's like, don't, he was terrified that I was going to get a driver's license, and he was going to be listed as my driving instructor, for that insurance stuff and everything. And so for the next couple years, the thought of me driving was just completely verboten. But then I moved to Atlanta, and by that time I was taking guitar very, very seriously, and I was going to a performing arts high school. So my life literally consisted of go to school, come home, practice guitar, and that was it. And that was I deliberately had no social life because I wanted to play the best that I could and everything. And so I was completely hermetic. I had no social life. I had no reason to go out and drive. And I knew if I ever did get a driver's license, I would have to start running grocery errands for the family and everything. So it's like that, grocery stores. I find grocery stores to be very tedious and annoying. I try to get out of them as fast as possible. So, so that was, uh, that was a big turnoff. Then I went to college in Boston, and nobody, you don't need to drive in Boston. I mean, the subway system in Boston is not like here in Atlanta. Every subway stop, every subway station is built like a Greco-Roman amphitheater, and it's just this big towering monstrosity. They're beautiful. I love the MARTA stops for that reason. Each one of them is just beautifully designed. But in Boston, it's literally like you open a door, go down a flight of stairs, and you're standing there on the on ramp. I mean, on the platform, and the the train pulls up, and you get in, and that's that. So I didn't need to drive, and then I got out of college, and I was out on my own, and I was like, fuck, I need to drive. So my dad said, well, I'll drive you to I was in my 20s at this point. My dad said, I'll drive you to the DMV to take the permit test, but you have to study for it. You have to study. And so I waited like 2 days and came back and said, okay, I'm ready. And sure enough, there's nothing on that test that any sane person has to study for. I mean, it's like you go in and sit down at the little computer, and I can't remember it was like an Apple IIe or something that I took the test on, like some insanely primitive computer. That's your tax dollars at work. But anyway, I took the test, and it's like one of the questions. The question would be like, which of the following can you not do on an interstate highway? And one of the answers would be sleep. And so, I mean, it is the most insanely obvious test you can imagine. And I got my requisite 40 hours that time by driving around with my dad, driving around with friends, obviously who had driver's licenses. That they were a little reticent of it, obviously, as you can imagine. And then I got to the DMV for the actual test, and I sucked. I mean, I passed with like a 70. Or a 71. I got the lowest possible grade, mainly because I was flirting with the cute girl that did my driver's test the whole time, I think. But there was a lot of resetting of parking cones after I left, I'm sure. Anyway, so yeah, that's the story about my driving. 3. I speak conversational Japanese. はい、そうです。私は日本語わかります。私の趣味は日本語勉強です。でも、私はママです。ロゼッタストーンは大切なもの。私は日本愛です。春木村上、Yukio Mishima, Takashi Miike, Kiyoshi Kurosawa, Shinya Tsukamoto ai desu. However, if there is one thing I cannot stand, it is bad English voice dubbing. Ha. When I hear that, I think, you fools, now you must die. Ha. 4. I once got thrown out of a satanic church for refusing to celebrate Christmas. So when I was in my early 20s, I went through a phase where I was heavily into the occult, and I would like to say I met a lot of interesting people. I met a few interesting people and a whole lot of posers. But the one person that I met was a guy named Paul Valentine, who runs the Worldwide Church of Satanic Liberation. And so got to know Paul and felt like we were pretty good friends. He gave me honorary lifetime membership in the Worldwide Church of Satanic Liberation, and or the WCSL, which is most people, you say that to them and their eyes start to glaze over by the time you get past satanic. So he gave me lifetime membership, and after a while, I lost interest in the occult, and but I was still technically on the books as a member of the WCSL. And so one day, Paul comes across a thing on my Facebook page. Me and the guys in my previous band and our kind of go-to graphics designer, photographer girl and her family. We were all going to get together and celebrate Festivus one year instead of Christmas because none of us were Christian. So we were going to celebrate Festivus. Well, Paul loves Christmas, and which is fine. I mean, good for him. But he saw that on Facebook and lit into us, and blocked me, blocked all of us, severed all communication. I sent him an email basically just saying, "Hey man, I'm kind of surprised, but I wish we could talk about this," that kind of thing. And I've never heard back from him. And it was just the most bizarre thing because I love being able to tell people that I was thrown out of a satanic church for refusing to celebrate Christmas. Irony, irony. 5. I went to a wedding ceremony that had live professional midget wrestling at the reception. So my friend Meredith was a burlesque stripper at this wedding that was taking place at Lenny's bar, and it was this girl Inky. We call her Inky because she is from here down completely covered in tattoos, and I haven't seen her in a while. She may have the face done now too. But anyway, Inky was getting married, and they were having the wedding and the reception at Lenny's bar, which is sadly not around anymore. In fact, the whole strip mall that Lenny's bar was in has been completely demolished. So it's a real shame. Anyway, so Meredith was one of the burlesque strippers. There were several of them, and so she was doing that, and so I got invited as kind of an honorary guest, and it was absolutely just a spectacular evening. The girls were gorgeous on stage and off. And then the Rock City Dropouts played a set. They're a local band, good band. And so the Rock City Dropouts played. And then they did the wedding, and the wedding was really sweet. They walked out to the tune of "I Stop the World and Melt with You," which was really sweet. And then Rob, Rob, because y'all don't know Rob. But anyway, Rob was officiated the wedding, and he did a traditional thelemic wedding ceremony. They did thelemic wedding vows, the Aleister Crowley type thing. And they exchanged thelemic vows, which I thought was really cool. And then they so for the reception, they cleared out the main area in front of the stage, and they had set up there's this professional midget wrestling company. And I know that's not politically correct, but that's what they call it, so I'm going to call it midget wrestling. And they had this little ring, like a boxing ring. It was just this miniature ring that was probably about 5 feet by 5 feet, and it was raised up so that it came up to about here on me, so I could lean on the stage comfortably. And I actually backed away from the stage when I realized that was a good way to get covered in midget blood. But these midgets come out and they start wrestling, and they are just there was one that looked like a midget Glenn Danzig, I remember. And they come out and they're doing all the pro wrestling shit, bouncing off the ropes and pile driver and picking all throwing each other around. It's all choreographed, obviously, but they were doing the real shit. And the big centerpiece of the evening was this midget named Meatball. And Meatball comes out, and I'm not kidding, the ground fucking shook. This guy was about 2 feet high and about 5 feet wide. I mean, this is what, this was like Eric Cartman in 20 years, and this guy comes stomping out, Meatball, and the crowd parts, the fucking ground is shaking. He gets up in the ring, he gets in there with the Glenn Danzig looking guy and starts just beating the shit out of him. I mean, this guy, it was just, and he was the heel, he was the big showstopper, the villain and everything. But it was so awesome, it was so surreal to watch. And then after at the end of the thing, they had a get together or a contest where if for women, if you would get up on stage and make out with a midget, you would get a $50 gift certificate for a tattoo shop. And if you were a man, if you got kicked in the balls by a midget, you would get a $50 tattoo gift certificate for a local tattoo shop. And I thought about doing it, but then I realized, there's no way you're going to get off easy on that. And sure enough, Meatball was the one that would kick you in the balls. And the Danzig-looking guy was the one the chicks got to make out with, and he was kind of cute looking anyway, so they got to do that. And so I remember watching, and the chicks were fucking going nuts getting into this. Okay, this one chick got up on stage and grabbed him and starts like dry humping him and French kissing him and everything else. I thought she was going to like break him in half. But I guess, if he'd been wrestling all night, it's pretty tough. But she's just like going nuts, and there was like, there were like titties slipping out and all this stuff. It was awesome. It was just awesome to watch. And so yeah, it was absolutely the best wedding I've ever attended, and there was no none of the usual boring cheesiness of a wedding. Nobody was, it wasn't people dressed in white in a white room, none of that crap. And it was a lot of fun. And I haven't seen Inky in a while. I don't know if she's still married or if they're still together, but it was a real fun evening. 6. When I cook spaghetti, I use steak for the meat. Well, this one's pretty self-explanatory, but I'll give you my my spaghetti recipe. What you do is, take your skillet, your pan, and heat up get the stove real nice and hot, and then pour red wine into the pan, and I like to use Cycles Gladiator, and is a great brand for this. And Pinot Noir is good. A nice, I stick with Pinot Noir. I was about to recommend something else, but that's pretty much your best bet. And you should start. You just start rolling the wine around. Pour a good dollop in there and start rolling the wine around in the pan. And, it should start basically bubbling and sizzling, and then it should actually, because it's, alcohol, it should start to burn after a certain point. And once it's doing that, you're ready. You should smell this wonderful aroma. You may want to, you definitely want to turn on the fans over your stove. You may want to turn off your smoke detector while you're doing this. But anyway, you should smell this wonderful aroma, and the steam will just fill up the kitchen. And this is part of cooking for me, is I love the ritual. It's just like Stouffer's microwave stuff and fast food if I'm by myself. But like if I'm with friends, I love to cook. And so this I love the ritual of it. Sometimes I do it for myself. And I love the ritual of it. I love to put on like the Manhattan Transfer. There's a Manhattan Transfer album called Brazil. It has a song on it called Soul Food. It's the perfect song to cook to, and that whole album is great. So listen to that. I love to listen to that while I cook, and get it really nice and sizzling and everything. And take the steak, and obviously you want to put the steak in there and start chopping it up. And the thing you need to remember is that the wine will stain the meat. It will make it look darker than it actually is. It'll make it look more done than it actually is. It'll also help cook it because it's burning, but it'll make it look darker than it actually is. It'll make it look prepared when it's not. So you need to be careful with that. And what you want to do, if you want to do the wine part of it, my recommendation would be to put the meat in there. Do a batch that doesn't have wine in it, and that way you can get an idea of like if it takes this meat 5 minutes, 10 minutes to be cooked through, whatever. Find out how long it takes to cook it for it to be cooked through, and then when you do the wine, you can just kind of work off of that time. And anyway, cut the steak up into little pieces as it's being as you're cooking it. Don't you get it? Obviously, you're not going to be able to get it to the point of like ground beef or whatever you normally use in spaghetti. But get it close, get it as chopped up as you can, and then as you're cooking, put another dose of wine on the meat as you're cooking. So that's going to get it. It's going to get it. The vapor of it, and then it's going to really get into the meat. It tastes wonderful. And the last thing you want to do. And I mean the last step for the meat, not the last thing, like don't do this, but the last thing you want to do is get some shredded cheese. I like to use really sharp cheddar. I love cheese. So sharp cheddar, get some sharp cheddar and pour it into the pan while you're cooking. And let it start melting into the cheese. Into the steak, and then afterwards you're going to take the rest of the shredded cheese and put it in the bowl and sprinkle it on top after it's done cooking. Obviously, this is insanely decadent, so it's a rare occasion kind of thing. And your grocery store will have shredded cheese. I use like Kroger brand shredded cheese or Kraft or something like that. And nothing special on the sauce or the noodles. I just get the noodles and the sauce from Kroger and Kroger brand. Whatever's clever. If you have a certain sauce, a certain variety of sauce that you like, certainly use that. And so then from there, you just put all of that together like you would regular spaghetti, and it is just wonderful. It's just outstanding. One thing I will tell you though is when you do that second dose of red wine, you're probably not going to be able to cook all of the alcohol out of the steak. So if you're severely alcoholic or what have you, a problem drinker, you probably want to avoid that step because it's just go with the one layer of wine because it's not going to be you're going to get the effect of the alcohol basically. So anyway, that is my spaghetti recipe, and that is my 6 facts about myself. So there you go.